Let's talk about the Commonwealth.
Yes, let's. For decades, the Queen has been the driving force behind the Commonwealth, visiting its member states more than 200 times.
Today, leaders and senior politicians will decide whether to grant her wish that Prince Charles should eventually succeed her as the head of the organisation. Joining us now in the studio, Royal Historian Kate Williams. Morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Let's deal with a couple of the practical issues. First of all, I think quite a lot of people may be surprised that they'd always assumed that the head of state here would be the head of the Commonwealth. That's not necessarily the case.
It's not necessarily the case. It's not a hereditary position. It is a position by choice. So that's what we're seeing at the moment, is the leaders, after we've had the big conference, are now in Windsor discussing the future leadership. And it's a case of they will have to make the decision as to who it's going to be.
Now, surely the Queen and her advisers would have known that it's not an automatic choice. So her saying she hopes to see Prince Charles, her son, carry on her work, is that controversial?
It's quite an intervention, and certainly your diplomatic correspondent, James Landale, has written quite extensively on the behind-the-scenes diplomatic work towards Charles taking over the role, some diplomatic conversations with various members of the heads of government. But I think everyone knew that that's what the Queen wanted. It was all very clear that's what the Queen wanted. And the overall speech, I think, did make it quite clear that she feels, in her view, he's the person to take it on.
But shouldn't that conversation have been behind closed doors? I know the discussion today is, but in terms of diplomacy, wouldn't have that been better behind closed doors? This is quite unlike the Queen.
Well, the Queen does stay neutral on all political issues. That is her genius, and where she's been incredibly successful. And I think this is the key point, that in this point she's made the intervention, and that is because I think simply because the Queen herself is so devoted to Commonwealth. She has devoted so much of her life to it. For her, it's one of the most important things she's ever done, and that is the case, that it's so important to her. She doesn't want to see it change, and she obviously sees Prince Charles staying with it as the way it's going to stay on. But certainly that's the question. And I think quite a few journalists have written about that. They're saying because the Queen's made this very clear what she'd like, because everyone's going to be discussing it, it probably is going to be the case that even though it is not a hereditary position, Prince Charles is going to be confirmed as the successor.
And we're watching, as you're chatting there, Kate, some of the formalities that are going on, the rivals of various heads of state coming in. It's a very interesting time for the Commonwealth, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people have drawn attention to the fact it almost has to sort of redefine itself in a way, albeit whilst it's embracing the past. Clearly, there are issues that have been tricky about what's happened previously that have to be dealt with in order that we can move on.
Yes, the Commonwealth, the point of the Commonwealth, the ideal point is a free association of nations. And there's been a lot of talk about reform. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh came out quite obviously talking about the reform. And I think another key question for the Caribbean nations is what we're seeing about what we're now calling the Windrush scandal, about so many people who have not been treated as British citizens when they felt they were, being covered extensively. And there was the rather diplomatic crisis that when Theresa May was asked for a meeting about it by the Caribbean heads of government, she said she couldn't. And we see now the Prime Minister of Jamaica talking about compensation. So I think that is going to be a key point that's going to be coming up, in a key discussion about immigration and about how this free association works.
Yeah, we're looking at some of the archive pictures of the Queen's early trips as leader of the Commonwealth. How does it define itself going forward?
I think it defines itself. The vision is the free association of nations, and the vision is, and I mean, it comprises a third of the world's population. But I think the key point that the Commonwealth feels in the future is trying to engage the youth, is trying to say to the young of these countries, this is what you need to engage with. This is interesting. So there's a huge oceans initiative to try and save the oceans, which needs some saving. And certainly this is the point. How do we say to the young of a lot of very young nations, that the Commonwealth is relevant to you? It's not just about your parents.
Well,
and that is the point.
Being able to see pictures from the archive, you see just how long the Queen has had this relationship and this diplomatic relationship and these visits, more than 200 countries. I mean, what Prince Charles has said is that his first visit to a Commonwealth country was to Malta when he was just 5. I mean, there needs to be a thorough understanding of what the Commonwealth means. Yeah. And he has that. He does have that.
He has been all over the Commonwealth, all over the world. But certainly, I think Mr. Corbyn has said that he feels it should be not good. It should be a rotating head of state, a bit like the UN, and that's what he said. And I think certainly Prince Charles probably will take this succession after this. But the question is, after that, is should there be more high-level government from other members, and after Prince Charles, what does it go straight to William? And I think although the British, there is this sense of tradition, and Prince Charles has travelled, and so have all the members of the royal family, it really is up to the members of the Commonwealth and what they want. So they may want Charles now. What they want in the future is we can't predict.
Kate, nice to see you this morning. Thank you very much.